Could you imagine life without the interstate highway system? Would you be able to commute, travel, or even complete simple tasks in your day-to-day life? Every day, millions of Americans travel on the system, but few stop to think about the impacts this historic frontier has had. The interstate highway system was created under the Eisenhower administration due to poor road quality throughout the country and a need for stronger national security because of the ongoing Cold War. The ambitious undertaking of this project was bold and unprecedented for the time, as very few nations had ever dared to cross this unparalleled frontier. This feat was even more challenging to the US, as it is one of the largest and most geographically diverse countries in the world. However, this project did not come without controversy. Some in the public disapproved of the way the government planned the construction of the highways without regard for urban neighborhoods and people's personal property. The sacrifices made by these people were critical for America's development, and they should forever be remembered in US history for their losses. By conquering this frontier, the interstate highway system allowed the United States to grow stronger as a nation, as it allowed for safer and more efficient travel, an incredibly diverse and robust economy, stronger national security, and an infrastructure that would support the country for decades to come.
The quality of roads in America before the interstate highways were put into place were inadequate to say the least, as most roads were unpaved, ridden with damage, and were generally in poor condition. Aside from these issues, there were few roads for people to travel on, which made commuting outside of big cities nearly impossible. There were also numerous fatalities due to the bumpy and unsafe nature of the roads and the lack of safety measures they possessed. After his election in 1952, Dwight D. Eisenhower made it clear to the public that creating safer and higher quality roads would be among his top priorities, as he had past experiences such as a military convoy he took across the country. The expedition across the United States in 1919 opened Eisenhower's eyes to how poor the roads were across the country, as the convoy had many complications in their 3-month-long journey. Eisenhower also recognized the necessity of a national highway system from his time in World War II, as he realized that the German Autobahn was so important for the country and that a similar system to this could benefit the U.S., not only in transportation, but also with national security.
Eisenhower first publicly mentioned his idea of creating a highway system during his State of the Union address that took place on January 7, 1954. In his speech, he listed the ways that the government planned to fund it and requested the support of both Congress and the governors of the country. In an interview, Eisenhower stated, "Our highways badly need modernization and expansion. The needs are so great that continued efforts to modernize and improve our obsolescent highway systems are mandatory." He believed the current highways in America were unable to support the needs of the growing nation, as they were not able to sufficiently provide Americans with a safe and efficient method of transportation. He also feared that the roads that already existed would not be able to evacuate larger cities in the case of a nuclear attack from the Soviet Union. Eisenhower's State of the Union address proved to be a major catalyst for Congress supporting the interstate highway system, as it allowed for America to begin crossing a frontier that very few had ever achieved.
The creation of the plan for the interstate highway system was highly contested in both houses of Congress. Both Democrats and Republicans were in favor of creating a national highway system, but those who opposed the policy feared the financing plan would only put the country further into debt. Senator Herbert of Virginia was one of the many Democrats that sternly disapproved of the ideas being presented by Eisenhower and other congressmen. He said the plan would only be an inflationary at a time when the economy was booming, and later went on to call the financing plan pure pork barrel. Other senators, such as Albert Gore Sr. and Hale Boggs, went as far as creating their own financing plan because they believed that the Republicans' idea would damage the U.S. economy. The proposal created became the plan that would reach Eisenhower's desk. Their proposed bill would finance the project via excess tax on gasoline, tires, and other roadside necessities. The federal government agreed to pay 90% of the cost of the project, while the remaining 10% would be covered by state governments.
On June 29, 1956, President Eisenhower signed the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1956. At the time, it was the largest public works project in U.S. history and the greatest frontier ever crossed in America. The construction of the interstate highway system began in 1956 after the Federal Aid Highway Act was put into place. The construction lasted over 18 years longer than anticipated and cost the government over $114 billion, while the original plan stated the construction would cost $25 billion. Most politicians were unsure as to what this project would look like once construction began, so most congressmen assumed that it would simply be upgrading the existing highways, which turned out to be highly impractical and caused the construction to be delayed.
In addition to this, construction was also held up because of public backlash, as many feared their homes would be torn down. Questions were also being raised because some felt the highways were specifically routed through black communities. Some people felt the construction companies were trying to form barriers between communities as a way to reestablish old racial zoning lines. Sam Fullwood III lived through this experience and recalls it in his memoirs. He stated, "I vividly remember the change. Jimmy Don Arnold tearfully told me one day he couldn't hang with the fellas anymore because the mysterious they were tearing down his house. William White's huge front yard became a mound of red dirt for an embankment to support an off-ramp to I-77. Though most regard the interstate highway system as an incredible engineering feat, it is also necessary to recognize the sacrifices made by those whose homes and lives were torn apart because of the construction." Richard Weingroff, who is the official Federal Highway Administration historian, agreed to answer the question, how much of an influence did Eisenhower have on the interstate highway system's construction during his presidency, and how involved was he after his terms?
You know, sometimes people call President Eisenhower the father of the interstate system, and I think that's a very valid name. He not only promoted the interstate system in 1954, 55, and 56, going far beyond what presidents usually did in promoting their initiatives. He had set up internal committees to figure out how to do it. He promoted it in Congress. When Congress couldn't figure out how to pay for it, he said, "I don't care how you pay for it, just get the job done." And so when Congress finally did get it done, finally did pass the Federal Aid Highway Act, he continued to be very interested in the results. After he left office in January 1961, when he was doing interviews with historians, oral histories, reporters, he always cited the Interstate Highway Program as one of his favorite programs. So this was a program that he valued very highly as president, that he was very proud of and continued to be involved with as president, as a former president.
The interstate highway system was officially completed on October 19, 1994, 38 years after Eisenhower signed the act that started the construction. When it was finished, it was 46,000 miles long. 4 years prior to the completion of the highway system, President George H.W. Bush renamed the interstate highway system to the Dwight D. Eisenhower National Interstate and Defense Highways. Because of Eisenhower's dedication, countless lives were saved due to the safety improvements. In 1962, the Gettysburg Times estimated that these new safety features would end up saving 4,000 lives per year. Along with this, they also reported that the interstates were reached through 90% of American cities, along with serving 65% of the nation's urban population and 45% of the rural population. This effectively united the country as travel and transportation became much more efficient. For example, Eisenhower's convoy in 1919 from Washington, D.C. to San Francisco took roughly 3 months, whereas that same journey today would only take 42 hours.
The interstate highway system is one of America's greatest frontiers because of the widespread impacts of the project and how unprecedented this time-consuming and costly feat was for America. Today, the United States has the largest economy in the world, and it has trade relations with more than 75 other countries. The interstate highways speed up the process of importing and exporting goods and allows for more products to be brought through ports around the country, which also reduces shipping costs. Many states rely on imports from other states and countries, specifically ones that are landlocked and may not have the best agriculture industries. Today, 76% of Americans commute using the interstate highway system, with some of them even relying on the system for their jobs, such as construction workers or truckers. Though not without controversy, creating the interstate highway system was one of the greatest frontiers in American history, as it has helped our nation grow and has modernized our economy, transportation systems, and our country's infrastructure. If it wasn't for Eisenhower's willingness to cross a frontier that very few nations had ever crossed before, the United States would likely not be the global superpower that it is today.